Alrighty, good afternoon. You guys are probably thinking it's morning, but we've been up since 5, so for me it's afternoon. If you have questions, just shout them out, especially the little ones. Don't be shy. My name is Lieutenant B. I don't use the last name because it's too hard to pronounce, 1. And 2, a long time ago when I went to Marine boot camp, Mike Gunny told me that everybody with the last name in SKI in war movies gets killed. So he would make me charge machine gun nests, so I don't use that last name. We're going to talk about some basic weapons of the Airborne. These also translate over to what the GIs, the general soldiers, used. The Airborne were a shock troop. We jump in, we seize, we hold. We have enough organic weapons and capabilities to hold out for 48 to 72 hours. And that's when the GIs come in and fall behind us. Why? Because they've got artillery. Artillery caused 90% of the damage in World War II. They have tanks. We didn't push tanks out of aircraft back in World War II. If we would have, they would have gone the ground really, really fast, but then you could only do it once. Okay? So what we're going to talk about today is a couple of weapons that we would jump with. The first weapon, early in the war, was the 1903 Springfield. 1903 weighs about 7 to 8 pounds. It's based on an 1898 German Mauser. Okay? 1903 because it was originally made in, anyone? 1903. It is a bolt action. It means you pull the bolt back. It's essentially a hunting rifle. That's what it is. It's accurate about 800 yards. It fires a hunting round as opposed to what the other the Allies, the Brits were using, the Germans were using. That goes back to the Americans have this tradition of, from the Revolutionary War and before, of we were hunters, right? We aim, we shoot. So it uses what's called the 30-06 round, 30 caliber, designed in 1906. So it's a big, heavy round. It takes, we don't call them clips, they're stripper clips. There's basically 5 rounds on each one, and you load the weapon. It's already loaded. You load the weapon in this manner. They use it in World War I. We use it all throughout the 1930s until the advent of the N1, and they continue to use it in World War II. Any ideas why they continue to use it? Because we weren't ready for World War II. Our industrial complex wasn't building. They're still building refrigerators. They were still they're building sewing machines like Singer. IBM was getting into the very, very early ages of punch cards. Okay? GM was still building trucks, the inland folks. So there wasn't enough. So they had to go off of stocks from World War I. Okay? We weren't ready. It's a very accurate weapon. Like I said, you can go up to about 800 yards. It's light, but the problem is when you see it, he is going to have to, every time, he's going to have to pull back. He's going to have to reload. Why don't you go ahead and give him a shot down range. There you go. Now this is like I said, it's a great long-range weapon. The Marines use these a lot longer than the Army did. The Army got all the new weapons first, then the Marines got them later. In the 30s, the US Army decided that they wanted a weapon that was just as accurate, but they wanted to be able to fire faster, better field of, better range and a better speed of fire, and that's where they came up with the Garand, the M1 Garand. This is the world's first semi-automatic weapon. What that means is when you pull, every time you pull the trigger, a round goes down. And he doesn't have to cock it. See? It has a special kind of magazines inside it. Magazine's actually in here. And it has a special, we call it an N block. Oh, I got one right here. So this is an N block. Okay? There you go. You got it. Get him out. You'd be dead by now. Yeah. It weighs about 7 to 8 pounds. And again, when I say 7 to 8 pounds, I want that to sink in. What weighs 7 to 8 pounds that you guys are used to? How many of you kids help mom take a gallon of milk out of the back of the car when you come back from the grocery store? That's about 7 to 8 pounds. No big deal if you're going from your car to the house. But now I want you to carry that over mountains, through jungles, through ravines for 2 to 3 months straight. They get pretty heavy. Go ahead and load your own. Load that way. There you go. And she's loaded. Go ahead and rip a couple off. Let them see the speed. It's accurate to the same distance. Usually you'd shoot about 400 to 600 yards. Go ahead. See how quickly that is? Go ahead and empty and clear. There. You see that ping? It automatically pops out when he gets to the 8th round. Now, in the history world, and in the internet world, and the movie world, there's the old wives' tale that the Germans would wait to hear the ping, and then they'd pop up and shoot ya. Okay, it happened a couple of times, but typically, no. If you hear how loud this thing is, you think you're gonna hear a little ping. It's just about as accurate as the World War II films where you see tanks firing on the run. Tanks in World War II did not fire on the run. They stopped, okay? The other thing about this is both of them fit the bayonet. Okay? The whole idea is I want to shoot the guy far away. I don't want to get up close, right? Because then he's close. But if I have to, you can use a bayonet. You can use it for all kinds of things. I can use it for cutting cake. I can use it for pounding steaks. I can use it for cutting cans open. But its main purpose is to shove it in the gut or the upper thoracic cavity of another human being. Okay? Do you know what this thing is? Kids love this part. They're all into the goo. You know what this little thing is here? It's called the blood groove. So who's the young person here that's all gumsy about this stuff? Not gonna stick you with it. Why is there a blood groove? Now when you get later in life and you have to like cook for your wife and you have knives and you're cutting meat, you'll find out why you want to have a blood groove. Why is there a blood groove here? If I take this thing and I shove it in your chest, okay, in between your ribs, and you're dangling on it, the suction in your thoracic cavity won't let me pull it out. That's why you have the blood groove, because there's a little air hole to let that escape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this in you, put this on your chest, and I'm going to pull it back out. Because the last thing I want to do is be stuck in you while someone else is shooting at me. That's the whole purpose of the bayonet. That's kind of cool. I like that stuff. Last two weapons we'll go over. First is the 1911. Officers and NCOs carried these. My grandfather carried one of these in World War I. Semi-automatic, 5 rounds. It's a big, heavy round. It's a 45. It's designed to knock a man down. Again, in the movies, when you see him running through the field and the guy's shooting one of these things and someone goes down 200 yards away, that's not true. This is more for in-close fighting, 50 yards or less. Every time I go to the pistol range and I shoot, I watch people crank the little aiming belt up to 20 feet away from them or 10 feet away from them where I'm trying to fire 20 yards. Okay? These are not generally very accurate unless you know how to shoot with them. But they're a personal weapon, right? They're there for support. Generally, officers are carrying a lot of other stuff. Radios, they've got map cases, they're screaming and yelling and moving people. So typically, they would not be carrying a weapon. The GIs would. The airborne officers would. To be a little bit more accurate, what they came out with, this is a carbine, 30 caliber carbine, okay? Some people think it's a mini version of the M1. It is not. It's completely different. Okay? It only weighs about 5 pounds. And it was extremely easy to manufacture. So for the guys who are in the artillery, the guys who are humping mortars over there or machine guns, they would have a personal weapon. Truck drivers, this thing's too big. If you're running around and trying to shoot and you're banging into trees, it's just too big and heavy. So they had to come out with a lighter weapon. This is accurate to about 200 yards, so think 2 football fields. It's a much smaller round, okay? It's a 30 caliber round. The other nice thing is, it comes in a 15 round magazine. Pop that baby in there. It's basically, think of it as a pistol round, okay? So it's for personal use in close. The paratroopers like this because what it is, they cut the stock off, they've got this. Because remember, I got to jump out of an aircraft with this stuff. Jumping out of an aircraft with one of these, usually it was in 2 pieces in a bag. Some guys would actually strap it across them. This, I fold it like this, and I put it across my chest, and now I can use the weapon instantly. German paratroopers, when they jumped, they only jumped with pistols. All of their equipment were in equipment bags. So again, when you see the movies and the Germans are jumping into Crete and they're landing with their MP40s and they're shooting right away, that didn't happen. What they were doing is running around looking for the weapons. Okay? The Americans would actually come down wearing their weapons. Now you see in some movies like The Bridge Too Far, where as they're floating down, they're spraying, shooting with their weapons. For those of us in the unit that are actually airborne qualified, Mr. Klaus he's back here. The idea that as you're doing this on your risers and you're floating, try not to hit other guys, try not to Roman candle where your risers get tangled and you're like a Roman candle and you'll pack, right? You don't want to hit church steeples trying to steer. The last thing you have time to do is try to pull a machine gun out of your waist and start spraying. Doesn't happen. But these were, again, in close fighting. These were used for in close fighting, and they were given to officers, senior NCOs, because they're carrying other stuff. I'm going to have someone else fire this. Pull it back and charge it.
You got it, charge.
All right, let her rip. Yeah, it's your mag. Or the pops isn't set right. Alrighty, excellent. Now, one last thing. The Germans got pretty smart knowing, we'll talk a little bit about uniforms. And then we'll get to that. Yeah, the Germans got pretty smart figuring out who officers were. Who do you think the first people that get killed in the battlefield are? Officers. You know why? Because we're supposed to know what's going on, right? So the first thing I'm going to do when I get a jump zone, guess what? He doesn't think I'm an officer anymore. He's the officer. The other reason why I like carbines, or they like carbines, is it's there. Remember, this is up to 800 yards. You can reach out and touch somebody. Same with this. This is closer. This is 200 yards. This is great for urban fighting. This is great for jungle fighting. That's why you see the Marines at the end of the war, almost exclusively, they're being outfitted with the standard carbines. Why? Because to be going through jungles as thick as you guys are, and having a rifle butt and a rifle that's that long, you just can't react as quickly. Some things about the uniform. He's wearing what's